And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM, presents Legally Speaking. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. I'd like to thank each of you for listening to our show each week. We've been doing this for a long time, but never have we seen so many changes in our judiciary and most recently the presidential debate. There's been a lot of talk about this president debate, and I don't usually like to get so much into politics, but it's got so many legal issues that are involved in the process. There were people calling for the president to drop out of the race, and people have ignored something that's very important to our community. The current president has appointed more African Americans to the federal judiciary than anybody in the history of American politics. In fact, he's probably appointed more judges than everybody else combined that of color. Number two, he appointed an African American female to the U.S. Supreme Court, first time in American history. Number three, the vice president is an African American. Number four, he's given more money into HBCUs than any president in American history. And that's something important for our community. Number five, student loans. He forgave billions of dollars in student loans that Republicans is trying to block. Number six, jobs. African American employment is the lowest it's been basically during our lifetime. In essence, everybody forget that under the former president, Donald Trump, the Black unemployment rate went up to 16.9%. Maybe you forgot about that, but I didn't forget about the human suffering. And I didn't forget about the fact of the mismanagement of the pandemic, where I saw thousands of my friends just die because the disease process was not managed correctly. So everybody talked about how poorly the president did in the debate, and he did, but his opponent was worse. And I don't think people listened to what he said because he was just talking, and what he was saying was just totally off point, never answered the question. Let's go through some of the things that Donald Trump said in the debate. Let's just do a quick fact check before we get into the other aspect of this. Donald Trump in the debate claimed that he's the one that got insulin prices down for seniors. Folks, the political pundit completely ignored that the insulin prices is something that happened in 2023. Biden was the president. So he took credit for what Biden did, and people didn't say, well, he just making stuff up. Well, he just made stuff up. He warned that Biden wanted to raise your tax about 4 times. Out of thin air, Biden said 1,000 times that he would extend tax break to anybody making under $400,000 a year. So he was talking about taxing millionaires and billionaires. Now, Trump repeated his false claim that everybody, including legal scholars, wanted to end Roe versus Wade, the constitutional right to abortion. 70% of the American public wanted to keep Roe versus Wade. And so he was saying these things and nobody paying attention, apparently. Trump claimed that Biden created jobs just for illegal immigrants. And the truth of the matter is total non-employment is higher than it was before the pandemic. Also, the employment level of native-born workers is way up. Now, Biden correctly said that Trump did call veterans killed in the war suckers and losers. A 5-star general confirmed that Trump said it. Trump claimed that Biden caused the inflation, but economists say rising inflation was mostly due to disruption to the economy caused by the pandemic during Trump administration. Trump grossly inflated the number of immigrants who have entered the country during the Biden administration, putting the number at 18 to 20 million. That was completely false, and without any evidence, said that many of them from prison and mental institution. It was a racial type statement, derogatory, and people didn't check. That was completely false. Trump claimed that, quote, we had the safest border in history in the final months of his presidency. But apprehensions of those trying to cross illegally in the last 3-4 months of his presidency were about 50% higher than in the 3 months before he took office. So in other words, under Obama, there was a better management of immigration into the country than Trump. Trump was 50% higher. And Trump falsely claimed that some states run by Democrats allow abortions after birth. Folks, if you were watching the debate, you should have started screaming then. If you do kill a baby after he's born, that's called murder. And so it was so outrageous, and it was shocking to me that the political pundits completely missed that. How did they miss something that's so obvious? He said something so crazy and so out of line that the newscasters completely gloss over it. He's saying that states will allow you to murder babies after they're born. That was so outrageous until it was shocking to me that maybe they overlooked that. Now, Trump also said the U.S. border with Mexico is the most dangerous place in the world, and suggested that it opened the country to violent crime wave. Well, actually, there's a reduction in violent crime. However, under the Trump administration, we had the largest increase in mass killing in American history under Trump. It doubled under Trump. And part of the problem is that they went with NRA and not trying to ban assault weapons. And so Trump falsely claimed that prior to the pandemic, he had created the greatest economy in the history of our country. That was fraudulent. What Trump did was gave tax cut to billionaires and millionaires, and that resulted in the largest deficit in American history. Under his leadership, he created an $8 trillion deficit, almost $8 trillion. The federal deficit was $21 trillion when he took office. By the time he left, it was like $29 trillion. So what he did was took borrowed money and put it into the national economy and redistributed wealth. So more people who were already rich got richer because of his policy. Poor people got poor. Now, Social Security is an important issue. And in order to protect Social Security, folks, when you get this argument, it's something very important you need to know. Social Security is based upon workers paying money into the system. So we have more people that are disabled and retired, then there's an imbalance to the system. The way that you fix Social Security to make sure there's enough money is that eventually they're going to have to increase the Social Security withholding unlimited. See, in other words, right now, I think if you earn more than $180,000 a year, they do not deduct Social Security at 1%. Well, what's wrong with continuing up? If a person makes $25 million, they continue to pay that 1%. Well, what happened is that we would create substantial revenue for the system. The 1% wouldn't hurt a person making $10 million a year. It only hurt people in terms of making less than $50,000 a year. It's devastating, but they're paying the correct amount. But the people that are making substantial sums of money, they don't. And that's the issue with Social Security. I'll make sure you understand that. Social Security has to expand it where people who make millions of dollars continue to pay into the system that 1%, and that would be enough to fund the Social Security benefits for our country. Now, the issue about insulin is important, particularly to African American community. There's a large percentage of our population who are type 2 diabetic that requires insulin. In fact, over 52 million Americans have type 2 diabetes. And for that, a lot of the folks that have type 2 diabetes or even type 1 diabetes which mean that their body doesn't produce any, they require regular doses of insulin. And before the Biden plan, people were on fixed income. They were struggling, folks, to buy insulin. Well, Biden was a genius in this. They capped insulin prices at $35 a month. And so that $35 is a lifesaver for people who could not afford to get their insulin on a regular basis. And so the Roe versus Wade case is important because under Trump and Trump judges, we've seen the elimination of affirmative action. For all those African Americans who think that Trump was beneficial to them, I want you to look at affirmative action. This is important. Affirmative action has always been around in American history from my standpoint. I attended law school, University of Georgia, that their affirmative action used to be if you're white, you're well-connected or wealthy, a political connection, you got into a prestigious law school, top 20 law school. Well, during my heyday, they expanded affirmative action to African Americans. There was highly qualified students. And for that, we were able to get admitted. My class it was 7 African Americans, and we all graduated. And we enjoyed the benefit of affirmative action that was then allowed to be expanded to us along with the other. One of my classmates was the son of the governor. So we have the connected people, and then we had African Americans. So did it make the law school ranking go? No, it didn't. I mean, the law school ranking is consistently the same. It's going up. And so the point is that it was important that we have that. Now let's take a caller. Mr. Imhotep, how you doing today, sir?
All right, then, Brother Nate. How you doing? Thank you for taking my call. I'll be real brief here. Wanted you to discuss with our public and our community and the guests this double standard of mentality of some people in our community. I saw the article and read the piece on Giuliani getting his bankruptcy dismissed, and that he was so disrespectful in the courtroom that the judge almost had to throw him out. Okay, now I've been in court in front of a judge maybe 6 times in my life, nothing criminal, civil, divorce proceedings back in the day, child support. But I was always taught you'd be extremely respectful. Don't open your mouth unless a question is asked to you directly by the person who's supposed to be asking or deemed to be asked. But according to this piece in Arizona Republic, Giuliani was so disrespectful that he almost got thrown out. And it leads to the larger thing that happened with Trump. I think the judge up there just allowed Trump to be able to criticize the court case, something like that. I'm sorry if I'm not actually correct, but I think he finally got a little leeway on the gag order from the New York trial case. And we know how he attacked the judges. The jury up there is still anonymous. We don't know who those jurors are because they've been threatened. Think about this, people. We have a jury of American citizens who did their job. They found Trump guilty, and yet they have to remain anonymous because they are facing death threats. Can you really explain to the people? Because I think our public keeps thinking that this false narrative that black folks relate to Trump because of this and that. No. We don't get this behavior and this treatment is strictly out of our realm. And how dangerous this is.
Go ahead. One thing I need to say, that's what he falsely say. In other words, we're repeating a falsehood. This statement is fraudulent. Black folks like me because I'm a criminal, in a nutshell. No, we don't. We don't think that you should be even running for president. Because a federal judge said that he raped a woman in a department store.
Exactly.
A federal judge said that he raped a woman in a department store. I mean, this is crazy stuff. A judge took away his ability to do business in New York. He can't do business. He lost his business license.
Can't do business, And then I read a piece from the Florida International University to where they did a poll of 12 states, about 30,000 young people between 18 and 25, and 75% of them said they didn't think he should be president at all. So these other polls at CBS, NBC, whoever they're running them, they're definitely off, and they're used to try to sway the voters. But no, overall, I don't think he's nothing. But I just want to throw that out there. You can comment on this disparaging
wait a second.
behavior.
Let me ask you a question. Are you concerned about the way the news media has been covering this story? I mean, I went through the statement that Trump made during the debate. It was crazy stuff. Crazy stuff.
Crazy.
And so he was articulate. He was boisterous. But what he was saying was crazy. If you listen to what he said, none of the stuff, number one, he never answered a single question. Not a single question. Number two, he was just making stuff up. I mean, it should have drawn some alarm. Did he not hear the question? Did he not understand the question? He volunteered that everybody wanted to get rid of Roe versus Wade. And the news media didn't correct him. What everybody talking about? It was like 30%. 7% said Roe should have been law.
Yeah,
that's what I'm concerned about. We see this one-side coverage, and then we had temerity of some of these elected officials, the no-knees Democrats, come on, well, you should step out. Well, I thought they were dumb as hell, and here's why. When Donald Trump had all these legal issues, being convicted of 34 felonies, they didn't ask these same Democrats, do you think that Trump should drop out of the race?
Exactly, I agree with you 100%. Baldwin. Yeah, and D.L. Hewley tore up Alec Baldwin, Harvey Levin, and all of them about that. I saw a long interview between them, and he really let them have it. And the bottom line is this: it's simple logic. Law, you're a lawyer. I'm in medicine. Law and logic and reason. Logic. Would you rather have someone that may forget a few names here or there, or a convicted felon, rapist, fraudulent business owner, liar of a college, and a co-conspirator that we know of, probably with Putin, because you hadn't got on it yet, but me and my mother talked about this trip with Clarence Thomas to Putin's house. What the heck is going on, Nate? Thanks for taking my call.
Wow. I missed that story about Clarence Thomas going to Putin's house. Elections each time around are important. And we've made some significant progress in our country. Back in the 60s, we fought segregation. We fought separate but equal. And everybody seemed to forget that our experience with democracy is not a 2-year process. It's only in the last 50 years that we've been given equal rights. Only in the last 50 years that we have access to attend prestigious colleges and universities as African Americans. A lot of these doors were shut. Some of the colleges, of course, always allowed African Americans, but a lot of them didn't. They were segregated, particularly in the South, University of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. I watched in horror when the issue between the Obama re-election, and I watched the students at the University of Mississippi protest, burning, looting. They were mad because African American got re-elected. It was crazy stuff. And at the same time, I see these elite athletes going to the University of Mississippi, a place whereby it was obvious that maybe they weren't welcome. They basically only want to use them to be successful in a football or basketball. And so we have to keep in mind that the freedom and benefit we enjoy today, they're short-lived. We only obtain these rights that we enjoy today since the 60s. And it took a long time for these rights to fully develop. Like, for example, busing, desegregation of schools. There is a long history of that, like particularly like in Indianapolis, where we had Christmas as a high school, which they're going to have their golf tournament on Monday. but Christopher Adams was formed because of segregation. And the actual case ended around 2002, 2003. John Moss represented him, and the end of it happened in right around 2002, I think, because I ended up representing John Moss at the conclusion of the case for fees and expenses. The case went on for a generation. So when you're dealing with politics, I had a young lady tell me recently at a medical facility that her boyfriend thought that Trump was a good president for African American. And I said, which one? Like Carson or the few that work in his administration? And the problem is that they listen to rhetoric where he gives false narrative, and it is repeated multiple times, and they think it's true. Or there is a tendency right now, our social media are controlled by right-wing people. Elon Musk bought Twitter, and now he allows all this crazy stuff on their broadcast. And I learned something even about Facebook or Meta. When I was out of the country, in certain country, what they receive on Facebook is far different than what we receive. And I was shocked to find that. I didn't realize that their content was screened much better than what we get in America. In America, our kids, I guess, get everything. But in other countries, they don't get the negative stuff. And so part of the problem we're dealing with in this fragile American democracy is that we have so much misinformation. There's so much misinformation that is floating around on our news media in places until it's hard to, from time to time, to determine what is true, what is false. But here's some truism. Our stock market hit 40,000 or something this week, or the highest it's ever been in American history. So even if you had a pension, for example, you've had the biggest push in your pension account that you ever had. The unemployment rate has stayed relatively low. There are still more available jobs in our country than there are people, which suggests that what we have to do, particularly in our community, African-American community, we have to work harder in the education arena so make sure that these opportunities are available to everyone. Now, one of the critical issues that I look at is this issue of affirmative action. And why is it so important? Well, the wealth of a people is based upon their education level to a great extent. If you were to take all the high school students in America, if 10% of all those students got PhDs, JDs, MBAs, then you would see a dramatic increase in the wages and income levels of African Americans. It was just that simple. And so the problem that we're dealing with now is that I was talking to some of my clients this week. I had a really congested week, lots of depositions all week. Man, it was like deposition war. But, we were talking about the lack of African-American males that are in college. And we have to work on that because we have to make sure that these young men are guided towards a degree process. Now, but the point I'm making here is none of this will, in terms of the Trump rhetoric, will help them achieve their goal because their policies and their plan of action is eliminate a lot of the programs that have helped us to achieve success. And Trump and his allies are the one that's been fighting affirmative action. Now we see an attack on diversity and inclusion. And I'm not sure where that's headed, but this is certainly a bad thing. Now, the other issue, the cases that have been dominating the news, I'm sad to say, most of them have been by Donald Trump or his allies. As the caller suggested, we see Rudy Giuliani, once dubbed America's mayor, somehow he ran for president and he's fallen from grace. After the 2020 election, he spread falsehood in numerous jurisdictions, resulting in the loss of his law license in New York and DC. Very sad ending to a person who had incredible credentials that were generally thought of in a positive manner. However, he lied on the ladies in Georgia, and they got a big verdict against them. And Rudy Giuliani filed bankruptcy in an attempt to get rid of the debt, but he did under Chapter 11. Well, he didn't file correct financial disclosure, and I think this week the bankruptcy was dismissed, and he can't file for another year. So what will happen in the interim, the creditors, I'm sure, going to try to foreclose on whatever assets he has. And so it's going to be a mad dash, probably to try to attach his condo in New York, his property. The problem, though, I think, and I have to double check this, he may have bought property in Florida, and I think that Florida has a law whereby creditors can't take your property. I think that's law. I got to double check that to verify it. And so that may be why you see a lot of people flee to Florida. One is that they don't have a state income tax, but two, if there's a judgment against you, it can't result in the loss of your real estate. And I remember that as relate to that American football player named O.J. Simpson. He moved to Miami and bought a home after the civil verdict against him. He's deceased now, but they were not able to attach his residence in Florida because of the exemptions under Florida law. And so now, the other case that hit the airwave like a bomb was the U.S. Supreme Court decision on Donald Trump immunity claim. It's a very lengthy opinion, and it appears that the U.S. Supreme Court engaged in legal jiu-jitsu in order to arrive at some protection level of Donald Trump. And I've not personally been a witness over my career to such favoritism been given to any individual before, since I've been a lawyer for over 40 years. What I mean is that in the state court action, all the motions they filed, except for hearing, the court has to consider. That generally doesn't happen. You file motion, there's a deadline usually to file motions. Court rules on them, generally most of the time they're denied, then you go on to try the case, and then you're sentenced, and then you serve your time. In this case, I received the Supreme Court decision, and it was a lengthy opinion, but let me just tell you what is said on the first page. Quote, a federal grand jury indicted former President Donald J. Trump on 4 counts for conduct that occurred during his presidency following the November 2020 election. The indictment alleged that after losing that election, Trump conspired to overturn it by spreading knowingly false claims of election fraud to obstruct the collecting, counting, and certification of the election results. Trump moved to dismiss the indictment based on presidential immunity, arguing that a president has absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions performed within the outer perimeter of his official responsibilities, and that the indictment allegation fell within the core of his official duties. The district court denied the motion to dismiss, and basically the judge stated that no person is above the law. And the Supreme Court made the following decision, quote, under our constitutional structure of separation of power, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and persuasive constitutional authority. And he is entitled to at least a presumption of immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. There is no immunity for unofficial acts. This case is the first criminal prosecution in our nation's history of a former president for action taken during his presidency. Determining whether and under what circumstances such a prosecution may proceed required careful assessment of the scope of presidential power under the Constitution. The nature of that power requires that a former president have some immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts during his tenure in office. And I stopped reading at that point in time. So when I said that the Supreme Court engaged in legal jiu-jitsu, it borders on the absurdity of what the opinion is saying. So it's an official act to let mob murder the vice president? Is it an official act to let a mob or encourage a mob to go and take over the nation capital and kill people? Is it an official act to allow a mob, to encourage a mob to go out and cause the death of a police officer? Is it an official act to allow a mob to injure and batter police officers performing their duty to protect the Capitol? It goes on and on and on. And what they're saying are official act, even consider that, in my opinion, borders on the absurdity, because if that was the case, what would prevent any future president from ordering the assassination of his political rival, or ordering the assassination, if they don't like a judicial decision, or an assassination of a judge? So just because a president say that it's official act, don't make it an official act in my mind. In fact, if abnormal behavior and criminality become official act, then that represents a departure from our democratic value as a nation. Our nation, we're a nation of laws. A nation of laws basically says that no man or woman can become a dictator. We watch in horror other nations have allowed dictators to take over their country. If you allow a president to have unlimited power to pick and choose what that individual determined is right or wrong in terms of criminality, then we're going down the rabbit hole of being a potential dictatorship. So we have to have a country where everyone, even the president, must follow basic laws. One of the basic laws is that we should never allow a president ever to encourage a violent mob to try to overthrow the federal government? Was it externally or internally an attempt to overthrow the federal government? It's just wrong. It's just wrong. There's no excuse for that. The transition of power is important for a democracy. In this case, when Trump didn't lose the election by a narrow margin, he lost the election by over 7 million votes, the popular votes. So in both elections, even though he won the Electoral College against Hillary Clinton, he lost the popular vote by 3 million. So in two elections, he had 10 million more people voted against him than voted for him. And keep that in mind. So because of this process, we've seen a deterioration of fairness. When the average citizen sees how certain rich and powerful people are treated in our legal system, it puts a bad taste in their mouth, quite frankly. You watch the average citizen, they go to court, they have to be respectful to the court, they have to be respectful to the jury, they have to be respectful to people, and that's what our system is about. In this case, we've seen one person able to usurp the power of a judge by being obnoxious. We saw witnesses being disrespectful. We saw national leaders, Speaker of the House, senators, congressmen, come to the defense of a person on trial for criminal cases. Now, the criminal cases that Donald Trump was being tried for were the same allegation that put his lawyer, Michael Cohen, in prison. Look at the indictment of Donald Trump, like 5, 6, and 7. It's identical to what Michael Cohen indictment sent him to prison for campaign finance violation. In the document, they listed Trump as an unindicted person because at the time they were saying that the president of the United States can't be indicted. Now, I remember this famous speech given by Mitch McConnell after Trump had left office, was leaving office. And he famously said, in his failure to vote to impeach Trump for trying to overthrow the government, that he wouldn't get away with it because there are criminal potential prosecution and civil remedies. So the leader of the U.S. Senate for Republican went on the record and says that Trump could be held accountable under both criminal and civil laws. He could be held accountable, that he hadn't gotten away yet. Yet we see, and when you take that and look at what the U.S. Supreme Court is doing, it represents, in my mind, a radical departure from norm. That one day, in not too distant future, hopefully we get through this constitutional crisis that we're in now. I hope and pray that we do soon versus later. In order to do that, it'll be incumbent upon us to make sure that everyone get out and vote in this upcoming election, no matter where you are. Encourage at least 10 of your friends and your neighbors to vote like you never voted before, because democracy is on the ballot this fall. We see a constitutional crisis developing right in front of our eyes. I'm thinking that in countries where dictators suddenly became powerful figures in their political equation, that you have to have some acquiescence from a lot of leaders in that country. See, a single individual couldn't become a dictator themselves. They have to have help. They have been able. And we see that now. We see a number of people sucking up, want to be vice president. We see the Speaker of the House going along with stuff that he's got to know is crazy. And you see all these senators and representatives all fall in line and ignoring what is the most flawed candidate to run for higher office in American history. The most flawed candidate to run for higher office in American history. And that's their candidate. We've never had anything like this before. And so when you're talking about voting, you have to look at what has actually been done. See, when Donald Trump took office, it's amazing to me that people have somehow lost history. He had the House and the Senate. They passed no bills that were significant that protect the border. And that's important. They blocked a bill because Donald Trump thought it would help the opponent by passing a border bill. It's a false issue. They're complaining about protection of the border. At the same time, they sabotage legislation that the Republican senator drafted to help eliminate the problem at the border. And when I hear people talk about that, it's sickening because they ignore the fact that in order to fix the border, you have to have more agents, you have to have a court system, you have to have judges, you have to have lawyers, you have to have resources. Only Congress can vote to have money available for those resources you need in order to fix the border. And Donald Trump and his allies made sure that what was a bill to address the issues and provide funding never got voted on in the House. It was shameful. So net result is they're making a campaign issue out of what they created and blaming Biden. And so when you're out there, you talk to people, they talk about, well, I think Biden should resign. Well, think about that. This is a Democratic Party. He's got, 3,900 delegates pledged to him through the voting process. So what do? You deny the voters who voted for him to win in the primary. You're taking away their rights. Is that what a political party should be doing? Isn't that what the Republicans try to do to overturn the election, take away the rights of voters? And so this is all nonsense. It's all nonsense because you can't ignore the rights of 14 million primary voters who said that we want Joe Biden to be our candidate, that he has done an outstanding job. No modern president has accomplished more than Joe Biden during his presidency. None. Nobody's even close as to what he's been able to accomplish. Everybody forget about the fact that when he came into office, we were in the middle of the worst pandemic in American history. Everybody forget about the fact that the unemployment was historically high, that the economy was on the brink of disaster, that we had to have special program to save lives, we had to have additional revenue pumped into the economy to make sure that it didn't go kaput. So all these things are important, and I want you to do your research to determine why they're important, how they affect you on a daily basis. I agree that the price of things are high. That's true. Inflation has been a nagging problem in our community. But the root of that occurred is that during the pandemic, in order for people not to starve, they had to pass massive spending regulation. And we're very blessed to live in a country that is thoughtful enough to look out for its citizens. I had the privilege to visit some folks in Jamaica and Montego Bay, and they advised me that during the pandemic, their government initially gave the citizen $200. And I said, okay, you can buy grocery, maybe rent. What do you do for the rest of the pandemic? Government provided no assistance. It was like every man and woman for themselves. And the people told me that they relied on money from people in America. So the people in foreign countries rely on our economy for their survival. Even today, the American economy is the best in the world, the best in the world. Nobody's even close to us right now. We're hitting on all cylinders. We got great job report under Biden leadership. There's been more jobs created than ever before. Now, the other issue is that I want to cover two quick items for local listeners. In Indiana, I told you before, this is important to local folks in Indianapolis. The new seatbelt law amendment now allows you, if you're in an accident, they could use that as comparative fault. So make sure you buckle up and be safe. Additionally, one of the other complaint that we had locally is that we've got a lot of potholes. Make sure that if you see a pothole, file a tort claim notice, notify the city or the state right away, and so that we can protect people who are using the roadway. Now, well, thank you for listening in today. I got to now go and teach a seminar at the National Bar Convention. And thank you, callers. And next week, we'll continue with new topics, new legal issues of today's. So until then, may God bless and keep you until we speak again. Take care, everyone.